Another random filler episode with a stereotypical sitcom plot. Yay. Grizzles be sick and shit. Or more specifically, Blossom and Bubbles are sick. Although I do want to kind of talk about these symptoms that they talk about in this real quick. Okay, so the snorting, I have no problem with that. It's sort of like replaces the sniffles, as it were, as something that one might do with the mucus that would normally happen when you're sick. That's fine. I think it works well, and it's something a little bit pig specific. Sure, that works. The red spots, the sneezing, all that stuff. That's typical stuff. For an illness or some sort of replacement for the chicken pox. I don't have a problem with that. Right? Not even hallucinations. He didn't even call it hallucinations. Imagining you're climbing Mount Everest. Okay. My biggest problem there is, why does it have to be Mount Everest for, like, the actual symptom? If the symptom were just hallucinating that you're climbing a mountain, that would be, like, over the top in an acceptable way, and then the girls could fill in the Mount Everest blank with their own imagination, because they're little girls. It'd be fine for them to have an imagination, especially since the only one who... Actually, no, and it ends up being... Bubbles ends up specifically mentioning Everest too, but you could have gotten that from Blossom, and Blossom would know Everest. So, it still makes sense for them to connect it back to the Everest thing. Without actually the Everest thing being part of the symptom itself. And I think that's stupid and overly specific to the point where it's not funny. But even then, the whole climbing a mountain thing, I can't help but wonder what the fuck that has to do with pigs. I mean, there's another symptom. It has more to do with pigs. It's gonna come up later, but that Mount Everest symptom just fucking bothers me because it's just so out of place. I probably shouldn't be bothered by it as much as I am, but I think the Mount Everest part really makes it just stick out like a sore thumb to me. Where it's like, you're trying to invoke random humor, and it's clear that you're trying to do that, and that's why it's not working. The professor gives them an antidote to take every hour to help, but the only way to get them to take it is by pretending the spoon is an airplane and... Okay, they're not infants. Like, I have to call the episode out on this one. Like, this kind of makes sense with Buttercup or Bubbles, because, Buttercup tends to be very stubborn, and Bubbles tends to be the one who leans more towards being childish. But with Blossom, this doesn't make any sense at all, especially since, as we're going to see in the next episode as well, Blossom tends to lean a bit more mature with, like, everything she does. Probably why she's the most relatable character, but that's beside the point. But again, she should be more mature than the other girls. She shouldn't need this stupid airplane shit. Right? So, there is a justification I can come up with, but it's not one that's conveyed very well in the episode. But I think it's one that could exist for this being this way. And that is basically either peer pressure or trying to make Bubbles feel less bad. Basically, because of the fact that Bubbles isn't willing to do it without the song, Blossom's also not willing to do it without the song. But again, I don't feel like that was conveyed very well, if that is what they were going for. And, it's just a little bit too slow. I have to call the show out on this because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, specifically with Blossom. Bubbles, I can see it. If it were Buttercup, I could totally see it. Blossom, I don't. I don't, and they needed to explain that a little bit better to me. Anaz, the professor has the jar been tarvu. Who will take care of Buttercup. She's gonna do it. So you already see where this is going, right? Buttercup claims to be responsible. She isn't responsible, and thus she has to fix the consequences of her actions or lack thereof. Yeah, it's a pretty predictable sort of plot there, but at the same time, just because it's predictable doesn't mean that it can't be good if we're given something interesting to work with alongside the more predictable plot.
Okay, first of all, Buttercup unique power is stretchiness confirmed.
She used them in Man Up to solve the issue. She's using them for comedic effect here. Good lord. They even have an excuse for Buttercup to be off-model in fight scenes, and they don't want to animate fight scenes? There's even less of an excuse. Whatever. Let's just get back to the Buttercup's day off plot.
Eating junk food and watching a Judge Judy parody.
Fuck this show.
Anyway, it's time for the antidote. Buttercup reluctantly does it and then goes back to being lazy.
Song comes back in this segment. Buttercup's a jerk about it. I don't care. I want to die a death of 1,000 needles in a tube sock. Let's just move. Let's just get this over with.
One of Buttercup's goofing off tasks is to make a giant straw. She runs out of straws doing so and goes to the store.
And you know what? I can at the very least say that the episode picks up in a few ways from here. You know, this is actually a good example where Buttercup begins, well, not really begins the scene, but for the most part is trying to do both what she needs to do and what she wants to do simultaneously. Like once she really sees what's going on with the situation. And it makes her come across as a bit less of a heartless prick. A bit.
She does kind of blow off Schedulebot when he finds her.
But then again, she snaps out of that attitude pretty quickly, so I'm okay with this.
Anyway, the girls are giant warthogs now.
Which, that's unfortunate. The person who explains this, though, Schedulebot. Immediately before saying this.
I'm Schedulebot, not information bot.
You just gave information. You're going to do it again later. And you also give information about when something needs to be done at a specific time. Why would the professor make you if you could not serve multiple functions?
Buttercup finds him smashing up food trucks and chastises them for inconveniencing her.
So much for the little bit of goodwill you built up earlier. I mean, good lord. Bubbles may be a brat, but at least she's not a sociopath.
Repetitive sequence of Buttercup trying to stop the Warthog girls, and then this happens.
How do I make them drink the antidote? How do I make them drink it up?
Lips aren't even synced up. The voice acting is stilted. I don't even know what the fuck.
I'm willing to admit one thing about this. The resolution of this is probably one of the best uses of the lantern powers to date.
So, you know, at least we got something good out of this episode. I still think Blossom should be the only one with the lantern powers.
Oh, Nuz! Now Buttercup is also illness. Who could have ever predicted this outcome? Fuck this episode.
It's not like this episode did nothing good. It's just that the things that it did do good were kind of small and completely overshadowed by the predictable plot. Yes, I know that when you do good things, predictable plot isn't that bad, but no, it overshadowed some of the good things that they were doing, and those good things were also even more overshadowed by the garbled mess that is Buttercup's straight up sociopathy. I'd honestly say that this is a step back from previous Buttercup episodes, and that's saying much considering how many of the Buttercup episodes from the previous that we previously saw were not that good. Oh, this was kind of painful to watch. Not necessarily the worst episode of the series. I think the Wrinkle Rough Gals, for me, still takes that. But much like the Wrinkle Rough Gals, I would appreciate never having to talk about this episode again.